Okay, so you normally get to see me conducting my surveys on site. It's not always possible though. It is time consuming to do, and I do feel a little bit awkward wandering around customers' houses with a camera, even though I do always ask permission first. And I've got a subject property for you today, but we're not going to be on site. Sometimes properties become interesting when we start to analyse the information after the survey, and this is just one of those circumstances. So I thought possibly it might be nice to show you this property and talk you through what we've done and what we've found. I will try and be quick. LinkedIn only gives me 15 minutes, and it is Wednesday night, which is pub quiz night, so we'll see if we can rattle through this. Now, I'm going to try and do this on the monitor using screen record. Never done it before, so wish me luck. Our subject property. Here we go. Here it is. I'm not going to show you the front of the house because there'll always be somebody who wants to drop me a message and say, "Oh, I've been here before, and this is my mum's house." So, in the interest of protecting the client's anonymity, I'm just going to show you the ground floor plan. It is a traditional terrace building. It's built with solid walls. It's got solid floors internally, but originally had suspended timber floors in some. It's traditional terrace layout. You've got a hallway, a living room, a dining room, and an outrigger at the rear with a kitchen. The couple that own the house, they've had the property for around about 15 years. It was initially purchased as a rental, although in latter years they've been using it as a bit of a holiday home. So let's give you a little bit of history. As far as we can ascertain, the house is like late 18th century. It was built without an original DPC. It has had several prior treatments undertaken in the past. There is evidence of an osmotic damp-proof course, and I know that the current owners have had 2 separate chemical DPC installations. In addition to that, about 5 years ago, the property underwent quite an extensive renovation. They put new flooring throughout the ground floor, replastered it, all new joinery, fitted a new kitchen, you know, the usual sort of stuff. So there are quite extensive renovations to the building as they were intended to use it as a second home. The clients have passed me some photographs of that renovation, works undertaken by the builders at the time, and it's pretty evident that at the time of that renovation, either the builders or the clients were concerned about the possibility of dampness because they undertook a number of things, which we'll go through shortly. So anyway, we went for an initial non-invasive survey, which is kind of what we always do from the outset, just so that we can sort of gather our findings and work out where we're going to go from there. And this is a ground floor. Now, the floor plan here, everything in red shows you where we found evidence of a problem. And as you can see here, we profiled the walls, and we were getting reading profiles of 350mm to 570mm on the left party wall with, you know, severely spoiled decorations here. We got quite significant profile on this internal dividing wall here, up to 700mm. Again, high profiles on the right party dividing wall and chimneys. There was disturbed plaster and decorations pretty much throughout the building, and most of the joinery throughout the house was wet. So let me talk you through the initial investigation. There are a couple of things that I didn't like. You can see this is the threshold at the front entrance to the property, and you can see that the ground level in the front courtyard has been raised relative to the internal floor. I don't like that in a traditional building. What you can also see is that the ground height has been raised so much that it compromised the ventilation to the subfloor. But from the floor plan, if we just go back to there, you'll notice that the floor of the living room is now actually concrete, so it's a replacement of a former suspended timber floor. So the air bricks are no longer used, but it does give you an indication as to how high that ground level has been raised. I did mention there was evidence of prior retrofit DPC repairs, so there's a renticle osmotic damp-proof course there, and I've been shown some paperwork of chemical treatments that have been undertaken internally during the current owner's property, current owner's ownership, I should say. Let's have a look at some of the other things that I didn't like. This is the rainwater downpipe to the front elevation. You can see we've got some damage there to the old vitrified clay drainage where it terminates into the ground. There've been a lot of alterations to the drainage at the rear. You can see we've got an eco drain channel installed with just a hole cut out for it there. All the waste and stack and everything have been renewed in the UPVC. Originally they would have been cast. So let's have a look internally. I'm going to try and rattle through this. So there was a lot of typical damp tide mark staining into the internal walls, a lot of spoiling and distress to the plaster and decorations. You can see here that the original plaster behind has been gritted, blue grit like a bonding adhesive for the walls to follow on with a skim plaster, and all the skim plaster has started to delaminate. There's some significant spoiling and distress to the plaster and decor finishes around the property. This is the chimney breast in the dining room. If you notice, you'll see here that there's been some holes drilled in the walls. Yes, I'm the culprit of that. It was a non-invasive survey initially, but we did, just to gain an idea of what was going on, we took a few random samples from the walls to have a look at the moisture values of those samples. And here again, another area is quite spoilt and distressed plaster on an internal wall. Again, we've removed a little sample from them. On the initial survey, the samples that we took were all tested on site with a calcium carbide meter, so nothing too sophisticated really. This is the party dividing wall dining room. You can see we've got some severe damp staining, discoloration of plaster and decor. Most of that paintwork across the bottom of the wall had pitted and come away. The skirting boards were also quite swollen and distressed, and when we started to look at all the joinery articles throughout the building, there were excessive levels of moisture in the joinery. So these are the internal door casings and the skirting boards here, very high levels of moisture in the skirtings. It's probably also important to mention that those skirting boards are not original. These are all MDF replacements that were installed in association with that renovation of the property about 5 years ago. So you know, these moisture values in replacement skirting boards over such a short period of time are pretty significant really. And even the mechanical fixings used to secure the skirting boards to the wall, you know, they were all rusting and corroding. This is the laminate flooring. It had been installed right throughout the building, and there had been a very small escape of water event after the renovation. I understand there was a small leak from an appliance in the kitchen which resulted in some water ponding on the kitchen floor, which had caused that distress, but it was relatively minor. The damage associated to that leak in the floor was very local to the kitchen and not widespread, so I wasn't too concerned by that report. I was also passed some pictures of the building as it was undergoing the renovation. And these are some of the images that the client provided to me. So you can see here that the opening between the dining room and the kitchen has been enlarged. You can see that the dining room floor and the kitchen floor are both concrete, and they incorporate a damp-proof membrane, which you can see here. The tiles, obviously, in the kitchen, they're a replica quarry tile that are being placed over a replacement concrete floor. So you can see the damp-proof membrane here. So I wasn't too concerned about that kitchen floor, and here is the membrane under the kitchen floor. What did concern me is this. So this is the dining room floor, and that is a liquid applied bitumen membrane on top of the concrete, which the builder has also extended up the floor and wall junction. Now, considering that's a concrete floor with the DPM that I've just shown you, I find it really strange that a builder would find it necessary to apply a liquid DPM over the surface of the concrete and then extend it up the wall. So that caused me concern. But if you look at the walls in the dining room here, they're completely different to the walls that I've just shown you from my inspection. There's very little evidence of significant damp and distress to those plaster and decorations. But obviously there must have been some concerns for the builder to actually go ahead and do that. Whether he was just being precautious or not, I don't know. So we did the initial survey, and as I've shown you there, that was the damage observed. These are what we found. These are the areas of concern, of major concern. So we wrote to the client and said, look, these are your problems. Oh well, this is what we found. But actually, we really need to get to the bottom of that. We need to come back up and the building up and do some more tests. And they said, yep, not a problem, Russ, crack on. So we went back to the building. Let me pull up the next one. Went back to the building, and I arranged with the client that the survey could be intrusive. We could open up the floors and walls, we could take some samples from the building at various locations to try and really narrow down exactly what was going on with this house. And that was all granted in advance. So here is another map of the building here, and you can see that we've got some locations 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 where we undertook some intrusive investigations to the walls and floors in order to help us ascertain exactly what was going on. So the first thing we did, we went to the water services. Here's the mains water tap. We isolated those, and we undertook a pressure test of the entire mains water service and internal domestic plumbing. And thankfully that was all successful. The system maintained pressure, so we've got no apparent leaks in the internal plumbing or mains water service. The boiler, there are no reported problems with the boiler. That's maintaining pressure too. So we're not concerned that the damage we're looking at is a result of a leak from within this building. One thing I was concerned that I mentioned before was the rainwater goods at the front of the building. If you remember, there was a downpipe and a cracked drain top there, so I was concerned about that. And I was also concerned by some of the alterations at the back of the building. So we did some camera inspections of all the drains. That's me inspecting the pedestrian gully at the front, and we also cameraed all the foul and the rainwater at the rear of the building. You'll notice that these rainwater downpipes, they drop into a close connection in the ground because the clients had the rear courtyard all paved with Indian stone, which means all the original gullies have been taken out, and because to them it looks neater with paving, you know, they haven't reinstated gullies, and I don't particularly like that scenario. It makes it difficult for me to inspect them. The connections between the rainwater downpipe and the below ground drain is now concealed, which isn't ideal, so I'd much rather see a gully there. But we did do that, and we did actually find some problems. So the front of the building, this is the below ground drain and pedestrian gully. As you can see there, it's completely blocked with soil and debris, and that will be causing water to back up against the front of the building. And in the floor plan, if I just go back to the floor plan, you will see there that the front wall actually has a plasterboard lining, and that appears independent from the wall, so I think it's been studied off and framed, and that would suggest to me it wasn't undertaken by this client, homeowner, but it undertaken by others. It would suggest to me that there've probably been long-term issues at the front of the building for somebody to actually frame the wall off, and that, I suspect, is likely the result of this defective drainage at the front, which probably nobody's ever looked at and got to the bottom of. Anyhow, we progress. At the rear of the building, I did explain that I wasn't happy with the close connections, and this is what we found. We found a displaced joint there between the rainwater downpipe and the below ground drains, which appear to have been replaced, but I'm not happy with this displacement there. So I think at least as a minimum that requires a further investigation, so it'll have to be opened up and investigated. So let's have a look internally. There were a few things internally that caused me concern during the initial survey. This is the laminate flooring that's been installed right throughout the ground floor, and as you can see, it's sort of stained and tarnished around the floor and wall perimeter. This white section here, this is a skirting board, and that would suggest to me there's likely moisture intrusion in the laminate, the floor and wall interface. So we take some moisture readings from the laminate, and they're coming back elevated, which are prompting further investigation. When we remove the skirting boards, we can see here this very clear evidence of moisture affecting the laminate right at the floor and wall interface. So I was right with that concern. These are the skirting boards. I did mention before they are MDF skirting boards. They're a replacement of the original. They were only installed in association with the renovation about 5 years ago. You can see a lot of moisture damage on the back of the skirting boards, and that's the reverse of the skirting boards closest to the wall, so it suggests an awful lot of moisture at the floor and wall interface. Moisture readings from the MDF skirting boards were again very high, and the skirting boards in almost all locations were in some places wet to the touch, saturated on the back, and also very swollen. So again, that would indicate that we've got an awful lot of moisture suppressed around the floor and wall interface of this building for those skirting boards to do that in such a relatively short period of time.